So the challenge to the government, investigate the Easter Sunday attack. Someone has given evidence. It has been published by Channel 4. Look into that. Are you daring enough to do that? If not, we must conclude that you too don't have the backbone to face up to the truth. One word about Professor Hoole's book, which has been translated into Tamil. Honorable Hakim and I were members of the Parliamentary Select Committee that investigated into the Easter Sunday attacks. Before we could write our report, that book was published. And we had the benefit of reading that book before we wrote our report. And in that report, if you read that report, in the executive summary itself, we have raised a question as to whether this was made to happen in order to create in the country a call for a strong ruler with a presidential election due to happen later in the year. Those words are there in our Parliament Select Committee report. And a few years down the line, a man called Azad Maulana says, well, that's what happened. Sivanesathura Chandrakanthan's Pillayan's secretary, who's fled the country, says whether that is true or false is another matter, but he's given details that have been published. Mr. Zuhair read from the Supreme Court judgment that touches upon the deep state. And that is what Professor Hoole has also brought out. Now, this is a very important issue because I'm going to publicly throw a challenge to the new government. On this very stage, the Honorable Minister of Justice Harshana Nanayakara and I spoke about the Anti-Terrorism Act or Anti-Terrorism Law or Bill that was brought, ATA, and said we don't need any replacement for the PTA, for the Prevention of Terrorism Act. It must be repealed without replacement. He also said that. Prior to that, when there was a CTA draft, Counter-Terrorism Act, the position of NPP was that complete repeal, no replacement. They said that in Parliament. They refused to participate in committees that discussed the CTA. Where we went and discussed, they didn't even come because their position was total repeal, no replacement. We are seeing a somersault today. We are seeing a complete somersault today. And my suspicion is that that is being caused by the deep state, no less. The security sector, and particularly the deep state, will not allow any government to do what even they have campaigned for. So that is why I say I'm throwing out a challenge to the new government. If you want to stand true to your own words, repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act without replacing it. Or else you are under the yoke of the deep state. Second challenge. The Supreme Court has found several persons guilty of not preventing the attacks. No one yet has been found guilty for having organized these attacks. How is that even possible that you don't know? There were security warnings, intelligence warnings from India 3 weeks prior to the attack with names. Some of those names were intelligence officers. No one was arrested. No one was apprehended. No one was even followed. Not only 3 weeks prior, the day before, that very morning at 6, frantic messages came. From where was this messages coming? What was the source? That source didn't die in the attacks, in the suicide bombings. It was coming from another country. Why is it then not possible? Why is it not possible? I was watching the interests of late parliamentarian Raviraja's family when the trial of his murder took place in the High Court of Colombo. Some of the accused were intelligence officers, naval intelligence officers. After the state, the Attorney General led evidence to implicate them with the murder of Raviraj. When the defense was called, the then head of the SIS, State Intelligence Service, came and gave evidence on behalf of the defense and said what the state is saying is not true. He continued in that office even thereafter. He was the SIS chief when the Easter Sunday attacks took place also. So even when the Attorney General of the country had indicted some intelligence officers, as was said by Mr. Zuhair, the government within a government or another government that is outside the pale of the law, outside, they function separately and no one dares touch them. If he was dealt with at the time he went against the state's position, he would not have been the chief of SIS at the time the Eastern attack took place. He was found guilty also and removed from his position subsequently after all the damage was done. So the challenge to the government is, all right, investigate the Easter Sunday attack. Someone has given evidence. It has been published by Channel 4. Look into that. Are you daring enough to do that? If not, we must conclude that you too don't have the backbone to face up to the truth.